This is The KJ Show. The KJ Show with host Dr. Katherine Johnson is a mix of breaking news and practical advice on the many ways in which the energy industry can affect you and your family. Katherine will combine energy updates and conversations with leaders in the energy efficiency community. So please welcome your host, Dr. KJ.
Good morning and welcome to the KJ Show. I'm Dr. KJ, an energy expert, and I am so excited to launch this show on my new podcast channel on YouTube. Hopefully you'll find it and enjoy it. And I'm also obviously going to eventually put it on Spreaker and all those other places. But I thank you so much. So my show focuses on energy information that sometimes doesn't even make sense. And today I'm going to dial in on something that has been confusing me for my entire 30 years in the business. The definitions of climate change. What are they? Climate change, explain, because they're different definitions. And what does it really mean? And I guess the answer is it depends on who you ask, because there are so many different definitions floating around, which begs the question, if you define things differently, then how do you know you're actually measuring the right thing? We'll get into that later in the show. But I always like to start with stuff that breaking news in the energy industry that you just can't make up. So, of course, we've had the election of Trump, and that sort of killed the Green New Deal here in America. But there's repercussions across the globe. In fact, Sweden, an early climate leader, Sweden, who, is very known for their sustainable lifestyle and their resourcefulness. They're very protective of their resources, and they've been promoting environmental policies for years. Not anymore. Actually, they're retreating from their environmental commitments as part of an EU trend. So just as the Green New Deal ideas are dying in America, they're also dying in Europe. So a U.S., basically 5 years ago, the European Union vowed to lead the creation of the first climate neutral continent. I don't even know what that means, by 2050, and pledged to spend, wait for it, 3 trillion euros. Why are we doing this? A long list of organizations got all excited and everything, but now they're saying, wait a minute, they're all pulling back because, first of all, no one has 1 trillion euros. And secondly, guess what? It doesn't make economic sense. I've been saying this for 30-something years. Controversial proposals now, they say, because they have carbon offsets and loopholes and emissions targets and delays, all these different areas, they're saying that, Sweden's pulling back and that the third largest carbon emitter is now starting to mirror rather than counter U.S. During the part of the explanation for Sweden's retreat will be found is that for decades, Sweden has been pushing the European Union and has actually been a leader in the European Union trying to get, promote all these environmental goals and climate change. But last year, its fossil fuels increased dramatically. And also carbon uptake by the forests have been cut down. You know why? Because they've been cutting down the forests. So there are not as many trees to absorb the carbon because they were doing something, I don't know what, they were just, so in other words, they've been doing things that kind of were counter to what the Swedish government had originally promised. And now they're starting to actually say, well, we're not going to invest anymore in wind and solar. We have pictures of solar and wind. They predicted that one of the environmental organizations said that Sweden's only going to hit one of its 16 environmental targets by 2030. And then the Swedish climate policy declared that the nation's climate policies were insufficient and relied on optimistic assumptions in April, and that their environmental protection agency predicted that the country would actually miss all of their targets. So they weren't even meeting their targets before they decided maybe they should step back and try not to meet their targets. I mean, maybe it's just reality hit and the price tag got too big. And this is sort of where I wanted to begin with the conversation was, um it is interesting. And then of course I do a Substack. You can find it, Substack, Catherine Johnson and just search me and you'll find it. And I just wrote in my last Substack that I published yesterday about how all these major banks are backing out of this UN banking initiative. Well, turns out they're not the only ones, because the borrowing costs have become so much higher. So let's have pictures of some different clean energy investments. So because yeah, that's it. There you go. So we have clean energy. Solar farms are very expensive. PV is very expensive and it's not recyclable. And basically, and this is wind, it's very expensive too. So the point is that because the Fed has kept the rates higher than what we had Trump would like, and because these banks are pulling out of climate investments because they realize they don't pay off and they're not going to get any money, no more government spending, no more Green New Deal billions of dollars backing up these investments, which, by the way, have never been cost effective. Now they're saying that the financing is too expensive. And with the tax credits going away and the political tide turning, that basically they're going to cut back on banks are going to cut back on investing in wind and solar projects. They've also had to cut back because certain states, like in the New England area, Massachusetts, decided that wind farms are too expensive and they don't want to invest them, and they also don't want them hampering their beautiful view of Martha's Vineyard. So they're actually starting to cut back as well. The ironic point is, even if the rates increased, it's still going to increase the overall costs of these projects because of the industry. Kind of when it took off, it was a lot cheaper, and now it's more expensive. So they actually think that this is just another indication that the reality of the expensiveness of these wind and solar projects and reaching these astronomically aspirational goals just don't make sense. I'm Dr. Catherine Johnson. I'm your host on The KJ Show, and I'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
And welcome back to the KJ Show on my new YouTube channel. Thank you so much for finding me and tuning me in. I have been in the energy industry for over 30 years, and I really like to talk on this show about things that people don't understand about energy. It's a very confusing topic. Energy represents a sixth of our economy. And as we know, it also seems to spill over into the headlines of every day. So today I saw a Substack article written by this expert guy, Roger Pietke, and I'm basically going to cite him in our show today because frankly he points out some of the utter hypocrisy that exists within the climate change community, especially around the definitions and the actual meaning of climate change, something that people don't always hear about, and that we use a lot of confusing terms. So, and his article was "The Bad Science and Bad Policy at the Heart of the Climate Movement." So I wanted to go. He's a really great guy, and is a sane person in the environmental world. But what he pointed out was that very few people are aware that climate change is defined differently. Now, when I was in grad school, a couple grad schools, I was, we all had to already sort of be very careful for like my research thesis. I had to be very careful what my definition was, what I was trying to research, what the problem or the research objective was. We had to be very careful. And I had to be very careful in clearly defining the hypothesis so I would know whether or not it was true, right? That's a basic thing you do in statistics too. You have to be very careful. So what happened is he's pointed out that depending on who you ask for, the definition of climate change is radically different, and that the including some of the big climate agencies like the International Panel on Climate Change (IPCC) and the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change (UNFCCC). So I put it up on the screen because I'm going to read this, and it's going to be a little too difficult. So basically, they say that a change in the state of climate that can be identified by using statistical tests and changes in the mean and or the variability of its properties, and that persists for a long extended period, typically decades or longer. I would argue centuries is probably a better metric. But anyway, climate change may be due to natural internal processes or external forcing, such as modulations of solar cycles, volcanic eruptions, and persistent anthropogenic, that means human-based, changes in the composition of the atmosphere or land use. So anytime, according to IPCC, anytime there's a change in the statistics of weather, regardless of how it's causes climate change. Well, there's a lot of changes in weather that have nothing to do with climate change. But here's a second definition. It's even more confusing. The UNFCCC adopted a much narrower and scientifically inaccurate definition, saying that a change of climate is directly attributed to, or indirectly, to human activity that alters the composition of the global atmosphere, which in addition to natural climate variability observed over comparable periods of time. So basically, they're saying that it's only human activity that causes climate change, which doesn't make any sense at all. So this means that basically the shift is now focused from sorry, I lost my place. Basically has shifted from focusing on surface temperatures to greenhouse gas emissions. And the other part that's really confusing is that when you start defining climate change, and it becomes a difficult thing to do. Now, what they're trying to say is they're actually sort of saying that the definition depends on who you ask. NASA has a whole nother definition of climate change that's sort of mixed between, I have it written here, human activities, natural processes which have been overwhelmed by human activities can also contribute to climate change, including internal variability, cyclical ocean patterns, El Nino, La Nina, the Pacific things, and external forcing such as volcanic activities and changes in the energy sun's output. So basically what they're saying is that climate change is maybe this, it may be having to do with the shift in, human caused activities. It may be having to do with the shift in, natural activities. It may be a combination of both, or it may be something completely else different. So what I am trying to sort of point out to is the utter hypocrisy of this. If we don't have a global accepted definition of climate change, how do we know it's happening? And how do we know it's actually being measured correctly? And I'm an evaluator. I spent a lot of my time looking at what would have happened in the absence of an energy efficiency program. We call it free ridership. We call it attribution studies. We're like, what is the, what if we hadn't done the energy efficiency program, what would have happened? What would have energy usage been before? Likely to have continued. So it's based on some assumptions, but it's based on some assumptions for what was going on prior. So the baseline is really important to measure the change. if any, in the program having on, removing or convincing people to use less energy. Well, they don't have that kind of baseline in climate change research, which to me is a fundamental scientific error. The thing that's interesting to me is basically there's been a shift from the greenhouse gas emissions that was focusing on that to average temperatures, because they still can't find which way is it really happening. Is it greenhouse gas emissions causing climate change, or is it changing in temperatures? There's a carbon brief in 2017 that sought to explain why these temperatures and greenhouse gas emissions were actually proxies for climate change. So they're not even using the actual climate change, they're using proxies, which may or may not be correct. The logic was that in human emissions, according to them, human emissions, have caused 100% of the global warming since 1950. No, there's been a few volcanoes in the process too. And according to the Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, since 1850, almost all of the long-term global warming or climate change can be attributed to human activity. Well, that's clearly not true. We've had a few fires, we've had some volcanoes, we've had weather that are not man-made. I mean, volcanoes erupt without us doing anything. In response, climate advocates now stop saying, well, we're going to focus on greenhouse gas emissions rather than global temperatures, rather than as a proxy, not just emissions. But their argument is simple. If there's lower temperatures, it's better. And if it's higher temperatures, it's worse. But the problem is, actually, we've been past the UN goal, the Paris Accord goal, for a while, and we haven't died yet. Has anyone told Al Gore? There's a lot of different climate advocates that have been saying for years, I love these quotes. They've been saying things like the science tells us that every additional tenth of warming matters. Every ton of carbon dioxide has consequences. But a few days ago, a climate policy expert that was missing said that the 1.5 degree Paris Agreement was not the end of the world, and he's befuddled. He's basically saying, so you've been changed, basically scaring us for decades. And if the sun gets a little bit brighter, then there's all kinds of, climate change that is not at all caused by human activity. So, in other words, it's not as bad as we think. And maybe the definitions are telling us that we need to figure out what we're defining and what we're measuring. Something that scientists do pretty well, but apparently not climate scientists. I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson, your host on the on my show on the YouTube channel, and we'll be right back.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
And welcome back to the KJ Show with Dr. Katherine Johnson. That'd be me, your energy expert. So today I've been talking about the changing definitions or the different definitions of climate change and how it depends on who you ask, which to me is just, well, utterly not at all scientifically based, right? But then again, we live in a country that can't necessarily define gender either. So, but to me, the point I'm trying to get is that NASA has one definition, the UN climate change people have another definition, the IPCC has another, everybody has a different definition. So nobody knows what they're measuring. And now, because they have these different definitions, they've decided to use different ways to address and measure climate change. Is it really happening? The Paris Agreement focuses on temperature targets, meaning basically they want to say that you have to hold the increase of the global average temperature to below 2 degrees Celsius, above pre-industrial levels, and pursue efforts to limit it to 1.5 degrees Celsius above post levels, recognizing that if it goes above this 1.5 magical Celsius degree, the world will basically collapse and explode, we'll all die. That isn't true. And so now that they've realized that they really can't focus on greenhouse gases as much, they've shifted to global average temperatures based on the belief that the only factor responsible for changes in the global temperature was greenhouse gases, but now it's average temperatures. So they're changing the goalposts a bit. They're saying, well, we didn't get the thing we needed when we were measuring greenhouse gas emissions, so now we're going to measure something else. The problem is that global average temperatures vary for a lot of different reasons. So one of the challenges that people are having is they're trying to figure out what in the world are they going to do. So now they have all these scientists that are saying that everybody matters, everything's important, all of our measures are important to us. That if we Al Gore, we're all going to be dead by 2020. The world is melting, and all of a sudden they're saying, wait a minute, maybe not. Maybe we actually can have a society or a universe or a planet that has global warming temperatures above the 1.5 Celsius. Maybe it could even be 1.6 or 1.7. And so this is what's happening within the climate community. They've been saying something for so long, and now they're realizing that it isn't true. And so there's this befuddlement that's happened. They used to say every degree matters, we're all going to die. And we've been scaring you unscientifically for decades in order to get you to move faster. But now that we're not moving so fast, don't worry about it. That is the new conclusion. Well, it's not the sense of urgency that we used to have because, frankly, we've already passed the Paris climate goal. In fact, one of the research I did was I discovered that even if we pass the 1.5 Celsius, that magic goal, arbitrary goal, we wouldn't know it for 20 years. So how in the world do we know we're actually, and it might go down too. It's weather changes. Climate is variable. So new research actually challenges the logic behind equating greenhouse gas emissions with global temperatures and global temperatures with human flourishing. According to Peter Cox from the University of Exeter, most of the planet warming in this century is not due to greenhouse gases, but rather, this is hilarious, reducing air pollution. Sulfur dioxide, which is a really bad thing. So basically, because we've been really effective at getting sulfur dioxide out of our environment, out of our air, the temperature, which cools the planet, the temperature is increasing. 2/3 of the global warming since 2001 is sulfur dioxide reduction rather than carbon dioxide increases. Have you heard about sulfur dioxide? No, of course not. A paper published in 2025 by SEMSET said the same thing. An evolving 75% reduction in the East Asian sulfate emissions partially unmasks the greenhouse gas-driven warming and influences a pattern of surface temperatures. We find that rapidly evolving annual mean warming is sufficient to be the main driver in uptick of warming rates since 2010. So wait a minute, humans aren't responsible for global warming? But, well, we are indirectly. We're getting rid of sulfur dioxide, which causes all kinds of disasters in medicine. It causes lung cancer. It's a pollution. We're getting rid of air pollution, which is supposed to be a really good thing, but apparently it's an obstacle to meeting climate change. The fact that air pollution counteracts the warming effects of the green gases has long been understood and has been discussed even in the science and the IPCC, but the significance to the climate policy warming results appears not to have been thought out. Well, that's true. So basically, what they're saying is now they actually say, this new guy, Zeke Housefather, says that there is around a half degree of warming that is hidden by aerosols. Without cooling from sulfate and other aerosols, today's global temperatures would already be too close to 2C above pre-industrial levels, rather than approximately 1.4 C they think it is. So to understand this correctly, in order to by cleaning up the air, we're actually reducing air pollution, but that also increases temperatures. So, and actually having sulfur dioxide in the air keeps the planet cooler. So by removing air pollution, we're actually creating global warming. Does anybody understand this? Because I get really confused, and it just shows you how absolutely difficult it is to define this concept in a few different ways. It just doesn't make any sense to me, and it also sort of tells you that it's climate change is a policy looking for a scientific fact as opposed to being a scientific fact. And when the policy doesn't quite jive with what the policymakers want and the science doesn't quite match up to what the policymakers want, then they, move the goalposts. It's absolutely incredible to me that pollution is now an obstacle to global warming. Who'd have thought, right? And by the way, who causes pollution? We do. So maybe there is some notion of this anthropogenic notion that maybe humans cause things, but what they don't take into effect is all the other side effects and all the other causes that are mentioned briefly in these definitions, like El Nino and weather effects and volcano eruptions. But nobody actually factors those into measuring the planet global temperature because, frankly, you can't control for all those variables. So as someone who spends a lot of time trying to figure out differences in pre and post behavior, the notion of climate change being a precise science is absolutely false. I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson, your host on the Bold Brave TV. On the YouTube channel. I'll get it right, I promise. A new platform. I got to get it right. On the YouTube channel, Dr. KJ, the KJ Show with Dr. KJ. I'll be right back, I promise.
Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation.
And welcome back to the to my show, the KJ Show, Energy Expert on YouTube. And I just wanted, I normally would have a call-in segment, but unfortunately we don't have that set up yet. But I do have comments that I can react to. Thank you, John. You said the definition is broad and almost meaningless. I totally agree with you. The fact that the IPCC and NASA and the other ones have very definite definitions. You can't solve a problem if it's not clearly defined. Absolutely. And then Benjamin Johnson points out the pre-industrial temperatures is, i.e., the little ice age. Yes, people forget that there was a little ice age that was also influencing global temperatures, and the little ice age had nothing to do with us. Another little fun fact I like to share with my viewers and listeners is that the Renaissance was caused. Global warming is the reason we had the Renaissance. The planet warmed. People didn't have to rely on eating grass anymore. They could actually grow crops. They could actually, not once they could grow crops and build towns and build houses, then they could think about art and literature and music and all the wonderful things that came out of the Renaissance. So global warming is one of the reasons Western civilization expanded and thrived, which is also very unsettling to a lot of my colleagues in my industry. As you can imagine, I'm not exactly the most sought after speaker in my own industry. Lots of the climate change sounds like a solution to get control of people and are looking for a problem, CO2. Absolutely. I love this. I'm reading these comments. Our ability to monitor key data points is critical. If you can't measure accurately, you have no ability to respond to it meaningful. And then clean water and clean air is much more effective. Thank you, John. I can be bold and brave. Well, I can say it. I'm not on their network anymore. I'm on my network, but John thinks I'm bold and brave. But the point I guess I'm saying is that this is something that gets me in trouble a lot with my clients. Many of my utility clients actually love the idea that I haven't bought into this whole climate change is ruining the world, and I have science that backs up what I'm saying. I'm also married to a meteorologist who has a much longer term view of climate than, say, 10 years or 15 years. I actually have a view of centuries, decades, millennia. We don't know how long. We keep finding new dinosaurs that we thought didn't exist, and so we don't even know how long the dinosaurs were around. How long do we know how anything else was? And we have yet to figure out how the dinosaurs died even. So there's so much we don't know about the past. How can we presume to be able to predict that, well, we're all going to die in 2050 if the temperature rises 1.5 degrees Celsius? The other point that I get in trouble with my colleagues is that I point out that depending on who you ask, it could be, are you looking at global warming from a 10-year area, or are you looking at it from 100 years? And when I first started in the industry in the early 90s, it used to be global cooling. That was a big concern. And I remember going to meetings sponsored by EPA, all these things saying global cooling is we're all going to freeze to death. And then I was working for the Edison. I was working at a nonprofit associated with the Edison Institute Electric Company Association, and they started calling it global warming. And I thought it was global cooling. Now it's global warming. And then they switched to climate change because guess what? Sometimes it gets warmer and sometimes it gets colder. That is, to me, weather. And so we have all these imprecise terms being used as a way to force us to give up meat on Mondays, to switch our fossil fuel burning cars for electric vehicles, who, by the way, still rely on fossil fuels to generate the electricity and use all these rare earth minerals that are horrible. And so, and hurt the planet. So EVs have much more environmental damage, or same as much more environmental damage than, say, regular cars, internal combustion engine cars. And so it's really been kind of like they're trying to push a policy rather than a scientific proven theory. And I get yelled at by my friends or my colleagues who think that I'm a, climate denier. And I am not. I just think that we need to be able to have a rational argument. And I can never have a rational discussion because they get all upset with me and they tell me I'm evil because I don't believe in climate change. I believe that climate changes all the time. I just don't think it should be a government policy that we're going to control people's lives and tell us how to live our lives and tell us how to do things because they say the climate is changing. Anyway, so the other thing I wanted to talk about, thanks, John, for the comments, is I did a show on my other network a few weeks ago talking about coal's comeback. Well, coal is really coming back. I don't know if you saw it, but Trump is shaking up the world again in the United States. He's actually now going to bring back power plants, which is going to create jobs in these areas that frankly needed it, especially places like West Virginia and Pennsylvania, where they've had basically unemployment and poverty for ever since they tried to shut the coal plants down. Now Colorado, believe it or not, no longer wants to shut its coal plant because guess what they're realizing? We need the energy. We have AI coming. We have data centers coming. We don't have a grid that can handle the increased demand for energy. So where are we going to get it from? We can't build nuclear plants fast enough yet. We will get there, commissioning or virtual power plants for sure. But in the meantime, the simple, best, and most cost-effective solution is coal. Now, I was listening to a coal miner who admitted that yes, there's environmental damage associated with coal. There's also environmental damages associated with natural gas and hydro and all kinds of different ways in which we can generate electricity and gas, or use those things. So there's always an environmental trade-off. But what we've now done better than we have in the last 30 years is we actually have figured out ways to do it better, how to extract the coal in a cleaner way, and also not destroy the land in the process. So yes, coal is still going to go dig in the earth, and they're going to go get these little nuggets of coal that basically generate electricity, but they're not going to be doing it in the environmental way that they did in the 1950s. Thank God. But they're also now, I don't have a time. They also now know that President Trump is serious about this bold, brave, big, bold, beautiful bill that he passed. And he's serious about getting energy security into the United States. We have an unlimited amount of coal because we had a lot of dinosaurs apparently who lived here and died. So, and the reason we've been going to war in the past is over oil. Well, wouldn't it be nice to rely on our own energy sources? I mean, just not only as a hedge, but also as a way to propel our country forward. We need the oil, we need the energy, the electricity to meet the demand that's becoming with the brave new world that we live in. So I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson on my new podcast, the Dr. KJ Energy Expert, and I look forward, I'll be right back.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
And welcome back to the KJ Show with Dr. KJ. I'm an energy expert, and today I've been talking about the changing definitions of climate change and what it really means. And the kicker is it really means that there is no universal understanding of what climate change is. The definitions are different, and it's what I call a moving target. And now they're also, as I was mentioning in the previous segments, how they're also changing the goalposts and how they're measuring climate change. They're getting away from looking at greenhouse gas emissions because it's a little sticky, and now they want to look at average temperatures, and that's a little difficult too. So the Paris Agreement had, again, this one magical aspirational goal of 1.5 Celsius that we aren't supposed to pass, and if we do, the world will fall apart. But we've already passed it, and and apparently and the reason we haven't died is because the Earth is remarkably resilient, and that's what people forget. To me, the whole notion of climate change really ignores the fact that our planet does a much better job keeping it going than we do. And the planet really doesn't need us. Nature doesn't need us. We need them. We need the planet. And we discount the I think miraculous activities that the planet does to cleanse itself, to heal itself, to warm and cool itself. And frankly, that's sort of the thing that, to me, it's, if you put climate change as a human caused activity, it's very arrogant. It's just discounting the notion of that volcanoes happen and weather patterns happen and things that have nothing to do with humans happen and affect climate too. So the problem is, now that they've realized that they probably passed that magical goal that Al Gore was warning us about, they are actually trying to figure out what are the factors that contribute to changes in global average surface temperatures beyond just greenhouse gas emissions, which means what are the targets supposed to be? Well, this becomes an incoherent policy because the UNFCCC focuses only on greenhouse gases as a way to control climate policy, as a way to control the climate, which is not, they're only looking at one part of a very large and confusing equation. The fact that reducing air pollution would have an overall warming effect has long been discussed. And the fact that actually by redoing pollution, we are actually doing good things, as I said earlier. So the problem is that climate change is bad, except where it's good. Climate policy has veered now into a political cul-de-sac. This is what Roger Pitch wrote. Bad policy, bad science, and the science can be found in the definition of climate change, which is at odds with scientifically accepted definitions of climate change of the IPCC. This has a result in the use of different metrics, global average temperatures versus human activities. And now we're at this really bad problem of we're implying that people are now having to admit that maybe the 1.5 degrees Celsius isn't going to kill us, and that maybe there's other more desirable futures that could be at 1.6 or 1.7. Don't tell Al Gore. And then this implies that the temperature pilot has already been passed, and that basically now the logic's shifting, that some warming is now acceptable. Global warming is now acceptable, which flies in the face of pretty much every scientist that's been advocating, or every advocate that's been mandating climate policies for the last 30 years. There was a couple excerpts from climate advocates saying that the science tells us that every additional tenth of a degree of warming matters. Another one says the 1.5 degrees Celsius goal is ideal, but there can be other evidence that shows we can live beyond that. Passing the 1.5 Celsius means social and economic chaos. Well, we have that anyway. And a few days ago, they actually now revealed that we passed that magical goal, and we're all still here, right? We're all still here. So basically, what it should be is now they have a new way of trying to explain all of this, saying that every tenth of a degree matters, but it matters unless the benefits associated with that increased tenth are larger than the cost of avoiding it. So reducing air pollution is a good thing. So that doesn't really count against, so we can still talk about climate change, and air pollution is one of the reasons we're increasing the temperature, but that doesn't matter because it's a good reason. So they're now changing the definition even. Well, it's okay to have climate warming if it's for a good purpose, like reducing air pollution, but we can't have it for man-made problems. Did you see how absolutely befuddling and hypocritical this is? It's okay. It's almost Orwellian. all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others, where all global warming is bad, but some global warming is actually better because we're reducing pollution. It boggles the mind. And reducing air pollution has costs too, but also benefits by acknowledging that, but they don't include that in the climate policy. They're saying that it turns out that burning fossil fuels also has costs and benefits. Um, African nations would love to be able to burn fossil fuels because they could lift them out of poverty and create electrical grids that are actually reliable and help develop their infrastructure. But Europeans and Americans are saying, no, we can't do that. You can't. You're going to contribute to climate change. We're actually being selfish, and we get to use it, but you don't get to use it. Again, very Orwellian. The narrow definition is a myopic policy focus, and it makes what they call now a new term called climate reductionism, which is another fancy way of saying that there's a belief, everybody believes that climate change happens, and the dominant explanation for all social, economic, and ecological phenomena is human-caused climate change. So don't argue with me with the facts. This is what my parents told me. It's all human-made. There's no other reasons for it. And if you can by restricting human causes of change of climate and then apply only to gas house emissions, then you're going to be able to solve the problem. So what I'm trying to say, probably not as coherently as I'd like, is that we have this problem where the world is warming and the world is cooling, and the policy experts don't know what to do about that. And yes, it got warmer because we reduced air pollution, which was cooling the climate. And oh, wait a minute, air pollution's a good thing. To get rid of, right? So it is this diametrically opposed views. So it's okay to have global warming if it's caused by reducing air pollution, but it's not okay to have global warming if it's caused by, say, a volcano. When does this make sense? Global warming is caused by all kinds of different things, including if the sun is shining brighter, if the earth is, if we have volcanic eruptions, things that are beyond humans' control, that causes global warming too. And that's not part of the equation. So at the end of the day, it becomes very clear that climate change policy has been a political mechanism to basically control us. And I hope, that shouldn't scare you, but it scares me. And you know what? It doesn't even make sense. And this is what I've been trying to say to my friends in the energy industry for 30 years. I'm not exactly, I'm not preaching to the choir, but the rational, sane people in my industry understand it, agree with me. Sometimes they can't say it, so they're happy I can. I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson. You're watching the KJ Show. I'm an energy expert, and I'll be right back.
Dr. RC will share extraordinary resources and services that promote educational. Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk. Dr. RC will share. Master of words, powerful player. What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom, purpose, passion, power, and peace. All quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words, Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life.
So, welcome back to the KJ Show on my new YouTube channel. KJ, Dr. Catherine Johnson, energy expert. And what I really love to do at the end of each show is talk about something that is fun. To me, it could be anything, but this was a particularly fun idea because for those of you who know me and have watched my other previous shows on that other platform, and there's 130 of them, you can go just Google it and you'll find it. I talk about beavers a lot because beavers are climate heroes. Beavers can redo landscaping and create meadows and bring back habitat in much more effective ways than humans can. Well, wolves apparently have the same effect. They reintroduced wolves in Yellowstone in 1995, and the quaking aspen, which is apparently the largest biodiverse thing in the universe. I mean, in the planet. It is a very interesting. All aspen trees are related to each other. It's beautiful. So it's really important to bring the quaking aspen back. And the problem was the Yellowstone wolves now are actually doing that. You know how? They're eating up the elks who eat the trees, the blossoms of the trees. So the wolves are helping to create a new generation of young aspen trees to grow tall and join the forest canopy. It's the first generation of trees in 80 years because the wolves, the gray wolves, are actually doing their job. They're killing elk. And without these top predators, the populations of the elk went unfettered. And this is one of the reasons that I don't get mad at my friends who hunt elk or hunt deer or, I don't like them hunting wolves, of course, but hunting elk and deer actually is important because if they take away their predators, then they become just they starve. They end up suffering. So it's better for them to have nature do its thing. So at the peak of the population, there was an estimated 18,000 elk that ranged across the park in Yellowstone, chomping on grasses and shrubs and leaves and twigs, basically destroying the quaking aspen little buds. That stopped the saplings from establishing themselves. And in 1990, they found no new aspen saplings, which is terrible. But then wolves were reintroduced in 95 and the picture changed. The wolves, as the adult wolves number grew, the elk population dropped. It's now down to about 2,000 elk. Well, I'm assuming they'll all balance out at some point. In a new study, they also said that the colleagues are actually excited because now aspen stands where the trees grow are actually getting bigger and better. They aren't out of the woods yet, so to speak. The elk population has declined, but buffaloes are now coming back too, that because they're in Yellowstone as well, and they've increased in some areas, which buffalo apparently also eat the aspen saplings. But bison are a lot harder for wolves to take down. Bison are formidable creatures. They can stop a Mack truck. I've seen bison up close. You do not want to see them up close. They are huge, massive animals. And so the wolves have a harder time killing a bison than, say, an elk. So they said, but it showed the importance of by bringing back wolves into the ecosystem, you're balancing it again. And yes, wolves can do bad things. They can go kill sheep too. And that's why that's why the ranchers and the farmers wanted to get rid of them because they were killing sheep and cows. But they also were killing elk and keeping the population in check. So, I think it's better if we just let nature do its course. And eventually, if there's not enough elk to eat, the wolves will figure something else out, or they'll reduce their population too. It's amazing how wonderful nature figures everything out. Then we don't have to. So they also now, because these aspens actually do the same sort of things that beavers do. They create shrubs. They create an environment that actually helps create more nature and biodiversity, including trees that the beavers love. So they basically show that ecosystems that lack large carnivores, because we took them out, basically are out of balance. And the last 30 seconds or the last 10 seconds, I want to just point out that I have a book, the Energy Savings Handbook, written by me. It's available on Amazon. It's also available on my website, Dr. KJJohnsonConsults.com. And it tells you in 7 easy ways to save energy and the planet in nice, down-to-earth language. Everything's defined. and it's based on my 30 years in the industry. And people read it and they say it's really interesting and good. So pick it out, check it out. Thank you so much for watching me today and joining me. And I look forward to our next meeting next time.
This has been The KJ Show. Tune in next week as Catherine shares her insights to current changes in the energy industry while drawing on her experience as an energy efficiency consultant for the past 30 years, right here on The KJ Show.